All right, we are going to start chapter 17 of Amari and the Night Brothers. When I wake the next morning, the first thing I do is check my phone to see if Magician Girl 18 has messaged about meeting up. If she really has info about Moreau, even just about being a magician, this could be major. Unfortunately, when I click on the org icon, I get this message. Error, please update OtherNet app. And because I have the worst luck ever, Elsie's bed is empty. She's not even in the food court for breakfast. Apparently, the junior researcher trainees all have to attend a presentation from some really old, really famous magical scientist who's visiting from the Bureau's London outpost, which means I have to skip breakfast and go to the lobby of the Department of Magical Science to wait for her. Whispers, the elevator shouts, "Now arriving at the Department of Magical Science," as its doors open to a wall of purplish blue flames. At first, I figure he must have the floors mixed up. Then I remember the lobby of the Department of Magical Science is constantly changing to reflect current breakthroughs in the field. Whispers? I ask. Is it safe to walk through that? Yes! Whispers shouts. Okay, I say, covering my ears. I stretch one foot out through the burning wall. Thankfully, I don't turn into Amari flavored barbecue. So I hop the rest of me through the fire. Once I'm safely on the other side, a tiny metal drone floats over to where I'm standing. You just stepped through a wall of night fire. What you may not know is that night fire isn't actually a true fire at all, but rather a convergence of naturally occurring free magic and ultraviolet light energy that combusts harmlessly. That's great, I say, not caring at all. Would you like to hear more about the scientist who discovered night fire? Asked the drone. He's visiting today. No thanks, I say. The drone sighs and floats away. The rest of the lobby is covered in giant screens showing different experiments taking place at Bureau facilities around the world. Each screen has a couple drones hovering nearby to answer any questions passerby might have. I find a bench beneath a live feed of Brazilian researchers studying the growth rates of various grasses. It's right next to a darkened screen flashing the words, "Outpost under repair due to recent attack." It's not hard to guess why no one else has chosen to sit here. Elsie finally comes out, surrounded by a huge group of junior researcher trainees. They smile and laugh as they talk, and she looks so happy. It's the complete opposite of how I feel whenever I'm with the other junior agent trainees. I wave her over. What's wrong? She asks, looking concerned. I don't know how to update the OtherNet app. Realizing how ridiculous that sounds, I add, I'm waiting for an important message on your. Elsie raises an eyebrow. Really? From who? I probably said too much. No one you know. Okay, says Elsie. Well, it's my mistake. I could have sworn I set the app to auto update. It can be a pain to do manually. She taps away on the screen for a couple minutes. Got it, she says. And don't worry about your missed messages. They should all come. Elsie frowns. Who are you supposed to be meeting? I snatch the phone and have a look for myself. New message from Magician Girl 18, 6 p.m., room 307 in the Vanderbilt Hotel. It's really happening then. My stomach does a flip. As exciting as this is, I'm also terrified. Elsie crosses her arms. You can't really be thinking of meeting this girl. I should make up a story. I know I should, but nothing I say will erase what she just saw. I'm caught. And besides, if I'm really going to go through with this meeting, somebody should know where I am, just in case something bad happens. She claims she can tell me more about Moreau and about being a magician. I've been so focused on finding my brother that I haven't even given much thought to my magic and how it works. Promise you won't tell anyone? I don't know, she says. There's probably a reason this Magician Girl 18 is hiding from the Bureau. What if she's Moreau's apprentice? What if this is how they get to you? You could be walking into a trap. She told me she wasn't, and I'm not going to assume the worst just because she's a magician. I'm one too, and I'm not bad. I guess not, says Elsie, but then we're assuming she even is a magician. There are probably a lot of bad guys who wouldn't mind using you for revenge since they can't get their hands on your brother. I didn't even think about that. There's no way for me to know if these messages are really from another magician. This mystery person could be lying about everything. I have to try. She can't be that bad if she wants to meet me so close to the Bureau, right? Maybe I should come too, just in case. You're the only person who knows about this, I say. If you're right and I don't come back, then someone has to let people know where I went. Elsie frowns. I guess that does make sense, but be careful, okay? I mean it. Your brother had a lot of enemies. I blow out a huge sigh of relief. I'll be as careful as I can be. With the first tryout tomorrow, the only thing scheduled for junior agent trainees today is something called supernatural immersion. Elsie described it as a supernatural entity show and tell, whatever that means. I'm one of the first to get to the classroom, so I take a seat near the front. As the other trainees come in, they do everything in their power not to sit next to me. Even when the seats get full, kids decide they'd rather take up spots on the floor. I just sit there in a full classroom with a circle of empty desks around me, like I've got some terrible disease no one wants to catch. I don't get it. Dylan and his sister are the last to come in. At the sight of me sitting alone, Laura shoots me a little smirk. They're both about to take up a spot on the floor next to some other legacy kids when Dylan stops, turns around, and comes to sit next to me. He gives me a small smile, and I honestly feel like I could burst into tears. It's so nice. Laura looks ready to explode. A chubby white guy in a gray suit comes in a few minutes after the class is supposed to have started. Name's Senior Agent Cozy, he says. Before we get started, I have a message to pass on from Agent Fiona. There will be a sleep-in taking place in the training rooms tonight with the goal of fostering camaraderie in the midst of competition. Further details to be provided. Now that that's out of the way, who knows what today's class is about? Dylan answers, the purpose of supernatural immersion is to get used to being around supernatural entities. Very good, Agent Cozy claps. Our first guest got spooked and canceled on us after this most recent attack on the Bureau. But not to worry, I called in a favor. And do I ever have a treat for you? He dims the lights. Shouts and shrieks go up as a pitch black puddle slinks across the floor to the center of the room. I jump in my seat as it passes in front of my desk. Billy Pogo goes red and points a shaking finger. I know what that is. It's a boogeyman. Had one under my bed for years. A boogeyman? I lean in closer as the shadowy shape of a woman emerges from the puddle, her glowing white eyes searching the room. Boogie person, says the shadow lady. It's the 21st century, for heaven's sake. Agent Cozy hoots in delight. Isn't she grand? Well, class, this is your chance. Immerse yourself in this experience. Have a listen to her story. The boogie person tells us that her kind resides in the deep, dark shadows of sketchy places. She explains that certain creatures are allowed to scare and harass unsuspecting people if they wander someplace generally acknowledged to be spooky, like graveyards, old abandoned mansions, dark caves, and under beds. As long as the area has a current permission to terrorize zoning permit from the Department of Supernatural Licenses and Records. Makes me wonder if that's why Quentin always warned me about taking a shortcut through the creepy junkyard down the street from our apartment. There's no sign out front, and I've never seen anybody go in or out of there. Once the boogie person is done telling us about a few of her favorite frights, Agent Cozy lets us ask a question. I want to know more about that permission to terrorize stuff, but Billy Pogo gets his first question out first. Are you related to the boogie person who haunted the upstairs bedroom at 231 Knacker Boulevard in Charlotte, North Carolina? The boogie person strokes her chin. I do have a second cousin I simply adore in Charlotte. Can you describe him? Well, he's sort of a shadowy and terrifying, and he makes these creepy noises. We're all shadowy and terrifying, love. And creepy noises are in the job description. You'll need to be more specific. Sometimes he'd make this booga booga sound out of nowhere, right when I was drifting off to sleep. Oh, that was Clarence. Firm believer in the booga boogas, he is. Myself, I'm more of a spooky whispers in the middle of the night gal. Why do you scare people? Asked Brian Lee. I wouldn't mind hearing the answer to that myself. Everyone's got to eat, she shrugs. Boogie people eat fear. What does fear taste like? Asked Dylan. I have good authority that it tastes like chicken, but as I've never had chicken before, I can't really say how true that is. Fair enough, but why children? Asks a girl. Because nowadays, adults just don't fear us like they used to. They hear something under the bed and they're grabbing the flashlight to have a look. Children are far more likely to let their imaginations run wild, and that makes for some tasty fear, let me tell you. I have a question, says Laura Van Helsing. Well, really more of a statement. I roll my eyes. Of course she does. Anything to get everyone's attention back on her. Says here, Laura continues, squinting at her phone, that boogie people date back 700 years to the war with the Knight brothers. Looking uncomfortable, the boogie person glances at Agent Cozy. We don't really like to talk about those these days, dark times and such. Laura keeps reading. It's believed that boogie people were created by the Knight brothers and sent into the camps of enemy armies to terrify them in the night. The result being that armies would arrive on the battlefield, drowsy and sluggish. Laura looks at the boogie person. Such a scandalous beginning for your kind. Agent Cozy steps forward. That's quite enough, young lady. This boogie person is our guest. I don't see how any of that is relevant. But there's a magician right here in this room, Laura says. Don't you recognize one of your masters? The boogie person sniffs the air a few times and then looks to me. She drops to her knees. Apologies, my lady. I didn't recognize you. Oh, no, you don't have to bow. I hate that she sounds so afraid all of a sudden. Please stand up. The boogie person scrambles to her feet and looks up at me with frightened eyes. Us boogie folk know what you magicians are planning, and we don't want any part in it. Please don't force us. I'm begging you. I'm not. Do you mean Moreau? Please just let us be. The lights flicker and the boogie person fades into the shadows. Her fear of me makes me sick to my stomach. Is this what it means to be a magician? The rest of the trainees just stare in stunned silence. I swear I could melt right into this chair. Even though we agreed she wouldn't come, after hearing about my supernatural immersion class, Elsie begged me to at least let her take the elevator ride with me up to the 3rd floor of the Vanderbilt Hotel. I told her no, for her own good, but let me tell you, no one's overpowering a were-dragon if she wants to go somewhere. On the bright side, without her help, I never would have known about Mischief, a part-time service elevator known for pranking kids with out-of-order signs and self-destruct countdowns, and for a willingness to assist in any type of general rule breaking. As Elsie and I are lifted up through the bureau, Mischief has been giggling nonstop in the background saying, I'm helping a real-life magician escape. It's my crowning achievement. I'm so nervous, I'm bouncing from foot to foot. If I don't come back, you have my permission to add my Moonstone badge to your Vanquish collection. Think about the bragging rights you'll have at the next convention. You can make all the jokes you want, says Elsie. You are forgetting again that I can see how worried you are. Mischief says, now entering the Vanderbilt Hotel. About 10 seconds later, the elevator stops and the doors open up inside the closet of an empty hotel room. I'm confused for a second, but then I realize it makes sense to have a secret entrance like this. Our elevators aren't exactly open to the public. Be careful, says Elsie. I will, I say. Thanks for coming with me. The second I step off, Mischief squeals, magician on the loose. Elsie quickly mashes the button to shut the doors and they both drop down out of sight. I take a deep breath and dash out into the hallway before I lose my nerve. When I reach room 307, I spend forever standing in front of the door trying to gather up the courage to knock. Also, how are you supposed to greet a fellow magician? Is there a secret handshake or something? I knock. I'm so nervous I can't stand still, but nothing happens until I hear the door behind me click open. I spin around to find a tall, pink-haired girl leaning into the hallway. Tattoos cover her arms. Hurry, she says, before anyone sees. Are you? Yes, she says. Now come inside. I follow the girl into room 308. She waits by the door a few seconds, peeking into the hallway. You came alone, right? I did, I say. And nobody followed you? I don't think so. Good, the pink-haired girl nods, drops the fancy wooden do not disturb sign onto the doorknob, then shuts the door. She takes a few steps backward away from me. I'm going to show you something, but you have to promise not to freak out, okay? Or maybe you could just tell me what you're about to do. It's better if I just show you. Slowly, the girl raises her right hand. As it passes in front of her face, she whispers something that sounds like misspell. Suddenly, her face begins to blur, as though somebody went at it with a giant eraser. I jump back. The blurry-faced girl tilts her head and lets out the creepiest laugh. It sounds like multiple people are laughing at once. I turn and dash for the door. Wait! I know that voice. I turn and feel my jaw drop open. The end of chapter 17. I wonder who it is.